Larry Fitz has these incredible records, so many of them. But the one that is maybe most impressive is the fact that he holds one of the craziest stats ever. 261 games started. Larry Fitzgerald has more tackles in his NFL career than drops. And not just one more tackle than drop. He's got 13 more tackles than drops. It got us thinking here at Good Morning Football. What is the most mind-blowing statistic? Maybe not the most middle-of-the-road one, but the most mind-blowing one that you see and you double-check and say, is that real in NFL history? Sean O'Hara, you played with some record breakers like my man Michael Strahan. What is your most mind-blowing sports record in the NFL annals?
Yeah, Peter, great lead for Strahan, because I'm definitely going to go there. The thing that's interesting about the Larry Fitzgerald 41 tackles, the thing that blows my mind is the only way you're getting a tackle as a receiver is if there's an interception. So there's a lot of interceptions. I wonder how many of those were Kurt Warner's. All right, listen, let's get to Michael Strahan, a friend of mine, former teammate of mine. As everybody knows, he holds the NFL sack record right now, 22 sacks. Now, here's what's interesting about that. That was in 16 games. I'm going to go back to Reggie White. All right, and I know a lot of people know Reggie White from his transition from the Philadelphia Eagles to the Green Bay Packers and what he brought to the Packers dynasty and to Titletown. But I'm going to go back to 1987. 1987, Reggie White had 21 sacks in 12 games. Why 12 games? Well, it was a strike-shortened season. They played 2 games, I think, and then they went on strike, missed a couple of games, and then he came back and just went on a tear. And when you look at that statistic, 21 sacks. Look, the next highest player with 21 sacks in 12 games in a season was Sean Merriman. He had 17. So it's unheard of. It doesn't happen. And look, if you're under 30 years old, you don't know this. You certainly didn't see it, didn't watch it. Nobody remembers that season because it was a shortened season. But for Reggie White to have 21 sacks, defensive lineman will tell you, mission number 1, beat the offensive lineman. Sometimes the ball's even out, so you don't even get credit for that. So that right there is going to be, it will never get, it will never be beaten. 21 sacks in 12 games will never happen again.
Sean, I want to talk about something that happens an awful lot in the sport that I watch the most in the evenings now, and that's Major League Baseball. A lot of injuries. The Yankees have a DH, a designated hitter, who is injured with a strained quad somehow. And yet we cover a sport that is just a bunch of tough guys. And, you know, when we were talking about this topic, I thought about some of the toughest of guys, and I settled on Emmitt Smith. He had 11 straight seasons with 1,000 rushing yards. He's not the biggest guy in the world, not the biggest, but certainly among the toughest, and certainly played through injuries in his career, as all football players, it seems, do. And I just think that we, you know, at times, especially now that Emmitt's long retired and we can look back on the triplets and we get to work with Michael Irvin and all of that good stuff, I think we can look back on some really special days for the Cowboys. They're obviously hoping to rekindle those. But some of the running backs in today's game have already been unlucky with injuries. We talked about Christian McCaffrey earlier in this program. We've talked often, of course, about Saquon. Both of them significant injuries last year that they'll be coming back from, and we obviously hope and believe they'll be as good as ever. But I think the tough guys in this league sometimes are the biggest guys, but sometimes they're really not. For Emmitt to do that for all of those years in a row, to me, is just absolutely remarkable. And I'm happy to talk about guys that stay in there and that, you know, push themselves further, even when I'm sure they're exhausted. And as you saw right there, tackled by about 4 guys at a time.
It's so true, and I appreciate the process you gave behind how you got to that stat. Now, I remember the first thing I thought of when you asked this question was fantasy football. Like, what crazy, weird number thing happened? And I remember back in 2014, I had Dwayne Bowe on my fantasy team, and it was a year that was so weird. Wide receivers for the Chiefs were shut out of the end zone the entire season. I mean, Dwayne Bowe had 15 touchdowns a few years before this. So of course I drafted him thinking he was a viable option. How did this happen? Travis Kelce, Jamal Charles, they led Kansas City with 5 receiving tutties apiece, guys. Dwayne Bowe, Albert Wilson, Donnie Avery. Remember Donnie Avery? They were shut out of the end zone. There was a moment, I wish we could show it to you, for some weird reason we can't. Dwayne Bowe was ruled to have scored on a pass from Chase Daniel, my guy from Mizzou. It was viewed and called a fumble at the half-yard line instead, so I was robbed of it. I remember it. And a big part of the reason I bring this up, Shrakes, is because it obviously hurt and broke my heart. Somewhere Over the Dwayne Bowe was my fantasy team name that year. But it also I want to illustrate how quickly things can change. So for those Dolphin fans out there, the Buffalo Bills fans from last year, I'm looking at the all these teams that are, are making moves and doing their thing. The Giants, definitely one of them. 4 years later, Patrick Mahomes is out there flinging 50 touchdowns, 25 of them to wide receivers. So things can change just like that.
Yeah, and it's no insult to those guys from that 2014 team, but it's interesting watching Tyreek and Kelce out there. It's a long way from Albert Wilson and Donnie Avery and the squad that they had, and now it's a simple change at quarterback, and look what happens. I'm going to go from that wide receiver group to a wide receiver legend, and when the NFL did its top 100 players about at the start of the 2010s, Jerry Rice was the GOAT. He was voted number 1. And I just want to show you how amazing Jerry Rice's statistics are compared to everybody else's. His receiving yards record will never be broken. And we are in a passing league. Larry Fitzgerald's played 18 years, has 17,000. Jerry Rice has close to 23. That would require 5 more seasons of 1,000 yards from Larry Fitzgerald. It would require 23 years in the league for Larry Fitzgerald to come close to what Jerry Rice did. Think about all the accolades Larry has. Still 5,000 yards short from Jerry Rice. And I'll go one step further. Jerry Rice played in a different era where not every offense was pass happy. He played in a time where cornerbacks could grab and hold you. He played at a time where safeties could knock your head off and you did not want to run across the middle. I don't know. I don't know if this record will ever be broken, and he played in an era where it was so much harder to put up those numbers. Jerry Rice, 22,895, still 5,000 yards more than today's active leader, who is Larry Fitzgerald. Unbelievable stuff from the GOAT, Jerry Rice.